Hello again, everybody. So let's go through the product naming system, right? Let me take you through the key basics of naming your online course, right? And how does it fundamentally make a difference from a perception perspective, okay? Now, read the pro tip on the left hand side, right? And I'll read it out for you right now. So, the names give people the information they need to make a more confident decision, right? What it means is the name creates confidence in your brand identity and image, and your customers will feel the trust in consistency in the name and the product personality. Right? Again, what does this mean? The purpose of this is you choose the name wisely so that it describes the persona of the course that you're creating. Persona in this case is the characteristics of your course, which also relates to the persona of the audience that you're going for. Right? They should imbibe the niche and the micro niches that you're working on as a subject. So they should be related in somewhere or the other so that when somebody is in the limbo to take a decision, at least the name makes a difference to their lives. Okay? So that gives a higher probability, mind you, compared to when they're choosing a course A to course B. So that is the pro tip here. Okay. Now, the naming system for a product is described in 4 different categories. It is either descriptive or literal. Okay. It is suggestive. It is synthesized, or it is metaphorical, or what is known popularly as empty vessel. Okay. What does all this mean? A descriptive or literal typically means that you are clearly positioning what your course is all about, right? And if you see the example given, Toys R Us, by looking at it, you come to know this is for a toy company or a toy related activity or something to do with toys. Simple. So when Toys R Us came out with their multiple shops, people immediately could think, children immediately could think who this is for, what will it look like, etc. So color schemes, this, that, and the other. Everything was very clear in their face. So descriptive or literal means exactly that. And we'll go to naming convention, but just to give an example here, for an online course, for say again taking example of yoga, right? Suppose you do Kundalini yoga or Kundalini yoga teachings, right? Immediately whoever is interested in Kundalini yoga will relate to it one on one, right? I'll give you the persona of people, persona of the course, what they should anticipate if you put the right kind of color and schemes and descript to it. There you go. You attract the right kind of people, you address the right kind of people, and then you know what you're giving them and they know what they can expect out of it. Simple. That's what descriptive or literal means. Okay. Why doesn't everybody do this? Because sometimes what they offer is not only one particular thing, it's a multitude of things, and that's where the distinguish they have to distinguish themselves between the other names. All right. Amazon, for example, right? Amazon gives everything under the sun, right? So it's like a jungle. So Amazon probably serves them right. So with that said, okay, the second one is suggestive. Okay, what does this mean again? Suggestive would mean it builds on idea for your customers who already understand what it is. Okay. Now Twitter as an example. So what Twitter, you've seen that bird, right? It tweets, keeps on repeating what exists and passes on. It's known to pass on the news, right? So people in their mind start perceiving that. Maybe it's something to do with that. So a Twitter would mean something that is giving them news regularly. Hence, it became a message board of sorts, which is then used. So something that was suggestible was used and people could relate to it immediately rather than getting into a descriptive mode or describing them what it is and why it is and so on and so forth. Right? So that is what this means. But is Twitter only used for news flashes or just messaging? Messaging, yes, but it's anything and everything under the sun. All right. So that becomes maybe a good example for you to understand what suggested means. Synthesized. All right? Synthesized is basically innovation. All right. You join two words, you join three words, you relate myth to something, or you take an example of something and put it here, and so on and so forth. Right. So the two examples given here, say Microsoft. Now Microsoft is one word, but it's an amalgamation of two words. Right. It's come from micro, which is smaller and smaller, and soft, it came from software. So micro actually was from their perspective, was a microprocessor, because they made a PC out of it, right? They used PC for these things. Soft was some software, so they joined the hardware and the software to make a Microsoft out of it. That was Microsoft as your background, right? Similarly, you can use and go wild with thinking, abound, and go wherever you can with this. Oracle, mythical god, right? A Greek god out there. Does it mean anything? No, but there is a financial prowess to it. So maybe that angle took its place when it started off for Oracle and various other things existing out there now, right? As databases and so on and so forth. So synthesize, you can go a little wild. It could be prefixes, it could be derived from other languages, it could mean you are adding two or three words together, or you are changing the way things seem in a particular way, which then eventually when you join and make something else. Changelization, right? The book, it's change management and digitalization. That's what it covers as topics. So we join the two words to call changelization. The word doesn't exist out there. It's a more created and synthesized word. But if it makes a difference to everybody's life, why not? Let me pause for a minute. Okay, so let's continue. We just discussed the empty vessel, right? I'm sorry, we discussed the synthesized. So metaphorical and empty vessels typically are wildcards that you use and the way you want to use it. Okay, so Kodak, Apple, Fuji, all these guys have been Hitachi. Okay, Hitachi is a different story, but uh, this would mean just going and putting your creativity at play, right? What you perceive or conceive, that is design. Apple has its own story to it. Okay, Kodak, I'm not too sure about, but these are some of these just open-ended ones which work their way through. All right. With that said, you can choose your digital assets in one of these four categories, right? Just to design and define it accordingly. Your logos that come into play will also play an important role to describe it through and make an understanding which comes about from here. Okay. With that note, let's go to the next one to start naming your digital product in a particular way, right? So what you see on your screen now, what we discussed were four ways of naming your item, so you can have a basic idea of how a name is given to any asset, right? Any product out there, right? In those four categories. So once you have a basic inkling of how you want to position it based on the audience and this and the other factors that we discussed, the name convention can be put into three brackets, right? The first word, middle name, and the last word, right? Normal naming of a human being, if you will, right? Uh, the for a course, typically, right? We discussed there are again four main categories. Out of those main categories, you typically will be encompassing some niche that we discussed in RISE1, which is again falling into roughly five or six different larger categories of sorts. Right? Now, those have been tried to be put in the first word kind of column. Okay. The middle one is basically for the relevant, so to speak, activity which encompasses the first category. Okay. And the last word is typically to do with a course, right? What it's trying to teach. So you use the first word as a category, use the middle word of what you want to lay emphasis on, and third is the outcome, or rather the basic understanding of what you want to do with your course. Right? So take that as these three name convention. You can use the first two, you can use first and last, and can do a mix and match of these things. For example, you might want to use, say you're doing a business blueprint, right? How to show business growth, for example. So the first three, right? Digital business blueprint. Or you might want to use digital scale up blueprint or digital scale up formula, right? The second row for the last column. Similarly, you might go, suppose you're a wellness teacher and you are part of the active way you're trying to teach wellness for people from mind, body, spirit kind of perspective. So you might want to teach them, wellness healing system. All right. So these are all literal. Now, if you go back, what we had been discussing, it could be literal or descriptive. It could be suggestive, right? So you can, based on what you think could be one of the words from there, or synthesize, right? You can choose and mix and match half words of each, say teach or wellness. So you mix and match a digital wellness kind of program or a system and things like that. So this is more so to give you a guideline and some method to the madness, so that you have a constructive way of thinking it through. This we found is the best way. So choose at will how you want it and put it in one of those four larger kind of naming conventions. You can use this as theme, just to get you some kind of inspiration and some creative directive based on the niche that you choose, and mix and match and can come to a point, right? And for going completely synthesized or a hybrid or whatever you want to, right? You can use a combination of first word itself. So what we just discussed, right? Digital wellness or digital mindfulness uh, turbo boosting course. Okay, I don't know what that means, but could be anything. Right? So you get a general idea, right? This is giving you some ideation, so you can choose and pick and then put it into play the way you want it under the larger four naming conventions, right? So it is an important element, hence the emphasis has been laid. And when you do this, you can also use it for naming your, so your course has to get hosted somewhere, and you can call it a school or an academy or whatever. So you want to give it a name, right? Which formulates again like a community or something. So, for example, we put this as a digital business hub under RISE. So RISE Digital Business Hub. So that was the school name. You won't find any of these in the convention, but we use it because we're using the RISE Up formula and we're using RISE Up methodologies from the EPIC framework and so on and so forth. Right? So the business model that we're using is RISE Up framework. Again, doesn't exist here. We brought it up because we think we're making people rise to the monk level. So frameworks that you create out of, they have to be named in a particular way. The company that you do has to be worked in a particular way. And the tagline that, again. So these could be used in various ways or get an idea out of what you want to make and conceive out of this. Okay, so that is the general purpose of naming. So use them at will with some guidelines so that you come into the category. But remember the four conventional, the larger methods, right, of doing descriptive, suggestive, synthesize, and metaphorical. This lays a lot of kind of importance to the outcome that you come up with. Okay, but this is the second one. This particular naming convention is more for to give you ideations how this can be used. Now we'll go to the next one in the subsequent one. So I'll see you there.